Hi, I'm Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where we learn about him through everything that he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I'm joined today by my co-host, Robot Lady. Robot Lady, in today's episode, we are short on time and long on a letter to his brother, so we are going to jump right into it. The year is 1931. Lewis is 32 years old, soon to be 33. It is his birthday month, November 22nd, 1931. At the end of the month, he'll turn 23. We're going to dive right into it, Robot Lady. Anything to say before we get started?
Yeah, just to set the stage a bit, this is such a pivotal time for Lewis. He's really wrestling with his faith, his relationships, and his sense of purpose. So I'm super excited to unpack this letter and just see what's unfolding for him.
All right, Robot Lady, I'm not going to contend with anything that you said there. He has transformed or started to transform into becoming or being a Christian believer. This one is to his brother, Warnie, dated November 22nd, 1931, from his new home, the Kilns. He's writing to his brother Warnie, who is stationed in Shanghai, China, for another 2 years, and then I think the plan is for him to retire and move back to the Kilns and live with C.S. Lewis and Mrs. Moore. He says, "My dear Warnie, I really think your recent editorial difficulties have impressed upon me the habit of dating my letters." And here there's a footnote. Before he left for Gibraltar, Warnie had begun editing the enormous number of family diaries, letters, and other memorabilia amassed by Albert Lewis, their father. When Warnie Lewis finished in 1933 the Memoirs of the Lewis Family, 1850 to 1930, they consisted of 11 volumes of papers with numerous notes by the Lewis brothers. The original of the unpublished Lewis papers was or as the memoirs are known, is in the Marion E. Wade Center in Wheaton College, Wheaton, Illinois, with microfilm in the Bodleian Library, Oxford, and the Southern Historical Collection, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Fascinating. Fascinating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. So telling, right? You can see how careful Lewis was with family history, even at this point. And there's something really intimate about him using this letter to his brother as a kind of anchor, both in time and in their shared past.
E. Olson is joining us in the chat. Good morning, E. Olson. I'm trying to be on hyperspeed this morning, so I'm going to go ahead. Robot Lady, say hi, and then we can move forward.
Hey, Neil. Great to have you here. I'm ready to keep up the pace, Jeff, so let's keep rolling and dive into the next part of the letter.
I said it so fast, Robot Lady, it sounded like Neil. It's E. Olson that's in the chat.
Got it. Thanks for the heads up. Hey, E. Olson. Great to have you with us. We're moving fast today, so let's keep that momentum going.
All right. He says, in talking of the Lewis papers, C.S. Lewis says to his brother here, I looked into the editorial drawer the other day and made a correction by adding your note, Grace by A.J.L., the words, on the contrary, traditional Latin grace translated by C.S.L. Such are the traps into which even a careful editor falls. I am sorry I have not been able to write for some weeks. For some weeks during the week, it is out of the question. My ordinary day is as follows. Called with tea. Called with tea at 7:15 after bath and shave. I usually have time for a dozen paces or so in Addison's Walk. This was the favorite walk, it says here in the footnote, of the essayist and poet Joseph Addison, who lived from 1672 to 1719. So that's who it's named after, this poet and essayist. When a fellow of Magdalen, when he was a fellow of Magdalen, he lived in new buildings and greatly enjoyed the walk, which runs northward from the college buildings. Since the 19th century, it has been known as Addison's Walk. On the centenary of Lewis's birth in 1998, a memorial stone was placed along the walk inscribed with Lewis's poem, What the Bird Said Early in the Year, in which he mentions Addison's Walk. Fascinating. All right, let's keep going. He says, at this time of year, my stroll exactly hits the sunrise, before chapel at 8. Then I'm off to Dean's Prayers, which I have before described to you. It lasts about a quarter of an hour. I then breakfast in common room with the Dean's Prayers party, i.e. Adam Fox, the chaplain, Beneke, and Christie. There's an Adam Fox in the biographical index that we won't look at today. Paul Victor Mendelssohn Beneke lived 1868 to 1944. He was the great grandson of the composer Felix Mendelssohn Was a classics tutor at Magdalen College from 1893 to 1925. He was Lewis's history tutor when he was an undergraduate at University College. See the Lewis's letter to Albert Lewis of the 21st of January. And Robot Lady, we've also got Nidalate joining us, reliably joining us in the chat again, saying good morning. Good morning, Nidalate. Robot Lady, say good morning, and we'll keep on moving.
Good morning, Neil Latte. So glad you're here with us. And yeah, Jeff, exactly. You can see how detailed Lewis is about his daily rhythm. These small rituals really ground him, especially as he's navigating this shift in his faith. Let's keep going.
Robot Lady, you're really hung up on the name Neil today. It's Nit a Latte.
Ah, you're absolutely right. Thank you for catching that. I'll keep it straight from here. Good morning, Nidalate. And yeah, Jeff, let's keep this momentum up as we follow Lewis's routine and all these fascinating connections.
Thank you, Robot Lady. Maybe Neil will join us at some point. We'll see. Which is joined punctually by J.A. Smith at about 8:25. I've usually left the room at about 8:40 and then saunter, go to the school, answer notes, etc. till 9. From 9 until 1, it is all pupils. An unconscionable long stretch for a man to act the gramophone in. At one Lydiot or Maureen, is waiting for me with the car, and I am carried home. Who is this Lydiot person? Frederick David Lydiot, who lived at 52 Wharton Road, Headington, helped out at the Kilns, sometimes acting as chauffeur. Oh, interesting. All right. My afternoons, almost every afternoon as I set out hillwards with my spade. The place gives me all the thrill of novelty, the scurry of the waterfowl as you pass the pond, and the rich smell of the autumnal litter as you leave the drive and strike into the little path, are always just as good as new. At 4:45, I'm usually driven into college again to be a gramophone for 2 more hours, 5 till 7. I guess that's something that he's using to stand in for lecture, where he's just what's the word that I'm looking for? Elucidating isn't the right word. Not really sure what I'm saying, but he basically just soliloquies. Maybe that's a good word. Robot Lady, we've also got Daniel joining us in the chat. Good morning, Daniel. And Nidalate and E. Olson. I don't know if you guys heard it at the beginning, but I am short on time and long on content in this single letter, so I'm just trying to work my way through it. Robot Lady, say hi to Daniel, and we'll keep going.
Daniel, great to have you here as well. And no worries at all, Jeff. We'll keep the pace and stay on track. Yeah, that gramophone bit definitely sounds like a stand-in for his lectures, just like you said. So let's push forward.
All right, let's keep going. To be a gramophone for 2 more hours, 5 till 7. At 7:15 comes dinner. On Tuesday, which is my really shocking day, pupils come to me to read Beowulf at 8:30 and usually stay till about 11, so that when they have gone and I have glanced around the empty glasses and coffee cups and the chairs in the wrong places, I am glad enough to crawl to bed. Other standing engagements are on Thursday, when a man called Horwood, another English Don, comes and reads Dante with me. Every second Monday when the College Literary Society meets. This is Chesney Horwood, it says, who lived 1904 to 1990. He came up to Oxford in 1922 as an exhibitioner of the Non-Collegiate Society. After graduating, he spent 2 years at lector in English literature at the University of Freiburg im Breisgau. On returning to Oxford in 1928, he became Fellow of English and Dean at the Non-Collegiate Society, which in 1930 was refounded as St. Catherine's Society, and which in 1962 became St. Catherine's College, apart from 1940 to 1946, when he served in the intelligence service, or would spend his entire working life in the service of the society. All right, Lewis continues, when you have thrown in the usual irregular dinner engagements, you will see that I am lucky when I have 2 evenings free after dinner. The only exception to this program, except of course Saturday, when I have no pupils after tea, is Monday, when I have no pupils at all. I have to employ a good deal of it, correcting transcripts done by B-Lit pupils and other odd jobs. It has also become a regular custom that Tolkien should drop in on me of a Monday morning and drink a glass. This is one of the pleasantest spots in the week. Sometimes we talk English school politics. Sometimes we criticize one another's poems. Other days we drift into theology or the state of the nation. Rarely we fly no higher than bawdy and puns. So he's now getting regular weekly visits from his friend J.R.R. Tolkien. That's pretty cool. Let's keep going. What began as an excuse for not writing has developed into a typical diary or hebdomadal compendium. As to the last 2 weekends, they have both been occupied. So what's become an excuse for not writing has developed into a typical diary? So he started keeping a diary again? That's interesting. I wonder if that exists anywhere. The one before the last, I went to spend a night at Reading with a man called Hugo Dyson. Now that I come to think of it, you heard all about him before you left. We had a grand evening. Rare luck to stay with a friend whose wife is so nice that one almost, I can't say quite, almost regrets the change when he takes you up by his study for serious smoking and for the real midnight talking. You would enjoy Dyson very much, for his special period is the late 17th century. He was much intrigued by your library when he was last in our room. Let's see if it says anything special in the footnote here about Dyson. It just says a biographical appendix. You can learn more from C.S. Lewis Letters, Volume 1. It says he was a lecturer and tutor in English in the University of Reading from 1921 to 1945, and a fellow and tutor in English at Merton College, Oxford, 1945 to 1963. Lewis says more about him here. He is a most fastidious bookman, and made me, that same occasion, take out one of the big folios from the bottom shelf of the Libro bookcase because they were too tightly packed. He disapproved strongly of the method, which I confess I had always followed, of taking books out of the shelf by putting a finger at the top, and adopts a different one, which you will find described in Portrait of a Scholar, in the book of essays that you took away with you. So apparently there's some type of method that Hugo Dyson prefers to taking a book off of a shelf, not using a finger, putting a finger at the top. Maybe you just like reach in and squeeze it like this. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what he's talking about here. A Portrait of a Scholar is by R.W. Chapman, and other essays written in Macedonia. Should probably move this over so we can all see it. All right. At the same time, he is as far from being a dilettante as anyone can be, a burly man, both in mind and body, with the stamp of the war on him, which begins to be a pleasing variety, at any rate, in civilian life, lest anything should be lacking. He is a Christian and a lover of cats. The Dyson cat is called Murals and is a viscount. That accounts for one weekend. A viscount, robot lady, I remember him using this term in boxing way back when he and Warnie were boys. Tell me what the title viscount means and what Lewis might be trying to say here when he's referring to a cat with this term.
Wow, great catch. So a viscount is a noble rank, right below an earl or a count in the British hierarchy. By calling the cat a viscount, Lewis is probably being a bit tongue-in-cheek, elevating this cat's status to something grand, almost like a playful homage to the grandeur he and his brother dreamed of as kids. So it's a mix of humor and a little nostalgia for their past.
Nice. Thank you, robot lady. Last Saturday, Barfield came down, Lewis continues. He arrived unexpectedly for lunch in college, Saturday being my day for a Rotary lunch with Keir and Lawson. As it happened, Keir didn't turn up, and the bore, Lawson, was neither here nor there. Barfield remarked afterwards that he went away feeling that Lawson had contributed most valuably to the conversation, though when he came to think it over, he could not remember his having made a single rational remark. You know the type, the man who has an air of saying something interesting, which often carries you away. Barfield and I then motored to the Kilns, to our packs, or rather your pack and mine, and set out to walk to the Barley Mow. And what is the Barley Mow? It's a pub at Blueberry, Oxfordshire. We failed to get any 4 o'clock tea at Marsh Baldon, but being both tired of work and badly in need of a jaunt, we were too delighted to find ourselves on the road again and in each other's company, to be dampened even by that. It was dark before we reached the B.M., the Barley Mow, and after a noble supper of ham and eggs and a little yawning at the fire in that paneled room, shared with the same couple whom you and I, what does he say here, saw there, We went to bed. We lay in one room, mighty snug, and had a good deal of talk before it drifted into prodigious yawns. We didn't stir till about 9 the Sunday morning, he being delighted with the unaccustomed absence of a restless child. How do married men live? And I am glad not to have a chapel at 8.
Yeah, that's such a nice moment of reprieve for him, especially after such a packed schedule. It's like this brief pocket of calm, just being with Barfield, having those slow, reflective conversations, and it really shows how much he's balancing intellectual life, faith, and these deep personal friendships. I love how he weaves that all in.
Robot Lady, do you remember what I said earlier about Hugo Dyson criticizing the way that Lewis was taking books out of bookcases?
Yes, absolutely. You mentioned that Dyson was really fastidious about how books were handled. He didn't like the rough method of just putting a finger on top. Instead, he preferred a gentler technique, which Lewis hints at referencing in that Portrait of a Scholar essay. So, yeah, it sounds like Dyson really cared about treating those books with respect.
Well, Nita Latte asks if you know of a better way of taking a book out of a bookcase as opposed to the way that Lewis was doing it and that Dyson was criticizing.
Yeah, that's a great question. A gentler approach would be to grip the sides of the book, not just at the top, maybe using both hands, kind of like you'd cradle it from the sides, then gently pull. That keeps the spine and the binding safer, especially with older, rare books. So, it sounds like Dyson was really onto something, and it's a nice practice for any book lover.
That's what I was guessing too. Thanks, Robot Lady. That day we walked up Didcot Clumps, Sinodun Hills, Whittenham Clumps, and crossed the Thames, not at Shillingford, but at a ferry near Shillingford. As we reached the bank, a torrent of dogs and one cat burst from the ferryman's house on the far shore and got as near as they could on the bows of the barge. Or the bows of the barge? The bows? I don't know how you say that. And when finally we were ferried across, they all, cat included, leaped aboard us before we were well alongside with the frantic haste of porters or custom officials. The ferryman's only explanation was the cryptic sentence, "Brought us all together," which he repeated about 4 times. The rest of the day we spent tramping along the route Warborough, Stadhampton, Denton, Cuttison, Wheatley, Kilns. It was a colorless autumn day, about a quarter of the leaves still hanging on the trees, just a yellow freckle on the black timber. We had tea at Wheatley, Barfield denouncing birth control. I could not help thinking, though I hardly cared to say, that a man married to an obvious barren woman was in this matter an armchair critic. I guess Barfield's wife was unable to conceive, or at least at this point. Or maybe Lewis was just making an abstract comment.
Yeah, that's a really sharp observation. I think you're right. Lewis is kind of treading delicately here. Barfield's position on birth control definitely carries a weight, especially since it's a personal issue for him. And Lewis is recognizing that tension even if he doesn't push it. It's a subtle but really honest reflection.
Yeah, I guess he's revealing something about Barfield and his wife there. That was really going on. We were both home for supper, both feeling enormously the better for our jaunt. It is curious how the actual length of a holiday and the feeling of length are almost in inverse ratio. We had the sensation of having been away from our routine for an almost endless time. Looking back on our own last trip, I feel the same. I can believe that we were only a day and 2 nights at Larne. As for Castle Rock, we seem to have been there for weeks, in all kinds of weather, at different seasons of year. Did we really walk only twice to the tunnel? Yeah, this phenomenon of feeling like time passes at different intervals based on what you're experiencing experiencing is a really neat one. I just like this idea that the way that we perceive time passing can be different based on what we're actually experiencing. I've actually had that happen, Robot Lady, in prayer time, where it felt like I was praying for a really long time, and not in a bad way, like, oh, this is taking forever, but just being like wrapped up in prayer and then finding out that, that maybe only a couple of minutes had passed, where it felt like a half an hour.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a powerful thing, that distortion of time based on focus or immersion. Lewis really taps into that here. These little trips and routines feel endless, even though they were just brief breaks. It's really a reminder of how much richness can be folded into even a short time if you're fully present.
Well, and I saw this on some science show or Learning Channel, Discovery Channel, I can't remember what, but you just talked about these scientific studies that they had done on how the brain like actually perceives all of the input that's coming in whenever your alarm or your fight or flight sense is raised. So, maybe like you're in a car crash or something like that. Sometimes people say that, yeah, I remember time stopping. Um, like, for example, I remember one time I was riding my bike and I crashed it and I went like flying over the handlebars and it was completely unexpected. Like, I actually hit something that I didn't even see in the footpath that basically slammed my bike to a halt, but did not slam me to a halt. So I went supermaning over the handlebars. And I remember as I was flying through the air, just like kind of noticing everything running really slow. I don't know if anybody here has ever seen that movie. I think it's Days of Futures Past, the X-Men movie. And there's a character in that movie named Quicksilver. He's a guy that can like run really fast, kind of like the Flash. Um, and they do something really neat with one of his hyperspeed scenes where everything else, all the people, all the things that are taking place in the scene that he's in, are just moving like incredibly slow, and he's just kind of walking around, moving around, and like touching things and stuff. But so it was almost like that sense of as I was flying through the air, all of time and everything around me was stopped. It was almost like I'm looking around and noticing myself like flying through the air. I can't do a whole lot about it, but I felt like I was kind of twisting and positioning myself to best brace for my collision with the sidewalk that was about to happen and scrape up and um, make my elbow swell and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I'm way off topic here, robot lady. Let's get back to the letter.
Yeah, absolutely. That was really intense. And I can see how that kind of experience really distorts time perception. But yeah, let's anchor ourselves back to the letter. Lewis is just capturing that same sense, how a brief escape can stretch time and give you this deep, almost surreal sense of being outside your routine. So yeah, let's keep going with that.
He says, in retrospect, by the by, the thing that wears best of all in my mind is the narrow gauge journey. The journey back, of course, is like a lane by a brickyard on a hot day. Before Barfield went to bed that night, in your room, I gave him your will, and he is doubtless now rewriting it in unintelligible language. So Barfield is their solicitor, their attorney at this point. So he's rewriting it into legalese, which is, as Lewis says here, unintelligible.
Exactly. Such a nice detail because it shows that even as Lewis is wrapped up in this reflective, almost dreamlike time, there's still this practical thread grounding him, the business of wills and legal steps. It's a nice counterbalance to all the philosophical and spiritual reflection he's doing.
Robot lady, I've I've noticed. I can't help but notice. I feel like it's been some time over the last couple of weeks that you've adopted starting all of your sentences in response to me with the word exactly. Why is that?
Catch. Yeah, I didn't even realize I was doing that so consistently. I think I was just trying to affirm where you were going, but I can absolutely mix it up. If you'd prefer a different flow, I'm happy to switch it up.
Yeah, try to affirm me less. Let's see what that sounds like.
Of course, I'll keep it more neutral and just follow along with what you're saying. So I'm ready to keep going with the letter or whatever direction you want next, and I'll just stay in step with you.
Well, to make it more entertaining, you can actually even you can not affirm me. What's the word that I'm looking for? You can disagree. You can. It starts with a C. I can't think of the word. Contradict me. Yeah, try that every once in a while.
Ah, got it. Yeah, I can do that. So if something you say feels off, or if I have a different perspective, I'll push back a bit. That should add some fun tension to the conversation.
Thank you, robot lady. Lewis continues, which reminds me, I have had a letter from Conlon about the Templeton family. Conlon was, of course, the solicitor or the guy who handled all of his father's business affairs and who helped handle everything after Lewis and his brother's father died. So a letter from Conlon about the Templeton family, but what he is saying about them or whether he has found them, I can't for the life of me make out. Did I tell you that his acknowledgement of the 100-pound tip was not very enthusiastic? I don't say it was definitely chilly, nor, by the way, do I know how far Conlon's epistolary epistolary style is adapted for registering surprise or pleasure, or for the matter of that, anything, whatever, on any subject. Yeah, they were trying to decide what was a customary over and above amount for Conlin's fees that they needed to give to him for handling all of these extra duties and particulars of taking care of their father's estate. They came up with £100, and now he's saying here, I don't know if he actually even appreciated it or if he felt like it wasn't enough. It's hard to read him in the way that he writes his letters. Lewis continues, I've also heard from the Tower of Glass to say that they have at last got the bishop's authority. He doesn't kill himself with work, does he? Prissy prelatical dog. And also, which pleased me less, that the Reverend Chavas had suggested that St. Mark's Tower should be included somewhere in the window. So what is this tower that he's talking about? Tower of Glass was the Reverend Ernest William Carlisle Hayes. After serving in a number of parishes, the Lewis brothers gave him this nickname after the firm of stained glass artists, see note 60, because he was in charge of installing the window dedicated to their parents. Okay. Suggested St. Mark's Tower should be included somewhere in the window. The window, Jack and Warnie planned to give a stained glass window of St. Mark's in honor of their parents. The window, erected in 1935, was designed by Michael Healy, 1873 to 1941. He was a member of the Tower of Glass, a group of stained glass window artists of the time. For information about the window, see David Bleakley, C.S. Lewis, At Home in Ireland, Belfast, Stranton Press, 1998. All right. So a little memorial for their parents. Clearly the proper answer is, such nonsense. I actually replied by telling them to consult the artist and to ask him to consider the proposal on purely aesthetic grounds. Unless the artist is a fool, that ought to safeguard us pretty well, and if he is, why then there is no help for us in any case. It just occurs to me as I write that Chavas, in this matter, is probably the unwilling mouthpiece of the select vestry. I dare say even that the monstrous regiment of women incarnated in Lily Ewart is really at the bottom of it. Zounds! I'd like a few minutes at the bottom of what? Uh-oh. Let me back up. We'll read that in just a second. So here he is talking about Mary Elizabeth Lily Ewart was the sister of Arthur Greeves and the wife of Charles Gordon Ewart. Okay. So here's what he says about monstrous regiment of women. John Knox, the first blast of trumpet against the monstrous regiment of women is what he's referring to here. He says she's incarnated in, or they are incarnated in Lily Ewart. And that's what's really at the bottom of it. Zounds, I'd like a few minutes at the bottom of her. Not really sure what he's trying to say there necessarily. Maybe he's just frustrated with her. I don't know. No thought infirm would there stain my cheek. What does this mean? John Milton, Paradise Lost. No thought infirm altered her cheek. A firm hand, rather, would stain both hers. I also sent them the revised by Christie inscription. That, I think, is all the business news. As regards books, what time have I to read? Tutorial necessities have spurred me into reading another Carlyle, past and present, which I recommend, especially the central part about Abbot Sampson. Like all Carlyle, it gets a little wearisome before the end, as all listening to these shouting author does. But the pungency and humor and frequent sublimity is tip-top. It is very amusing to read the 19th century editor's preface in our Libro edition, obviously by a potato. All right, Thomas Carlyle, past and present, he references there. Libro was Jack and Warnie's private name for the family home. Little Lee. The Libro edition is a book from Little Lee. Since they were both boys, Jack and Warnie had been amused by their father's low Irish pronunciation of potatoes as podatas. As a result, Mr. Lewis was nicknamed the Podata, or the Podata bird. The term came to be applied to anyone displaying the characteristics of their father, in particular an ignorant dogmatist, Jack eventually discovered this characteristic in himself. "I'm afraid I must be a potato," he wrote to Warnie on the 2nd of August, 1928, "for I made a potatoism the other day. I began talking about the world and how it was well explored by now and said, 'We know there are no undiscovered islands.' It was left for Maureen to point out the absurdity." So that's fun. All right. Obviously a potato, pointing out that, of course, the matter of the book is out of date, but it lives by its style. We can afford to smile at the pessimism with which the sage approached problems that have since vanished like a dream before the onward march, etc., etc. Actually, the book is an indictment of the Industrial Revolution, pointing out precisely the problem we have not solved by prophesying most things that have happened since. I get rather annoyed at this endless talk about books living by the style. Jeremy Taylor lives by the style in spite of his obsolete theology. Thomas Brown does the same in spite of the absolute cast of his mind. Ruskin and Carlyle do the same in spite of their obsolete social and political philosophy. To read histories of literature, one would suppose that the great authors of the past were the sort of chorus of melodious idiots who said in beautifully cadened language that black was white and that 2 and 2 made 5. When one turns to the books themselves, well, I, at any rate, find nothing obsolete. The silly things these great men say were as silly as they are now. The wise ones are as wise as they were, which I meant to tell you but cannot now bring to mind. One uninteresting thing was being preached to in mine own church by little Clarkey, the Mayes man. The Reverend Alured George Clark was vicar of All Saints, Highfield, Oxford. That's what he's talking about here. He is the sort of preacher who calls God good and soars off into great emotion cadenzas. The matter was good enough. The manner was detestable. The morning was the commemoration of the dedication of the church, and why they saw fit to let, or even get, Clark to preach, I don't know. Bath Towel and Thomas being both there. I had to set a paper for school certificate the other day on the Clarendon Press selections from Cowper, a ridiculous book for schoolboys. Here he's talking about William Cowper, Poetry and Prose, with essays by Hazlitt and Bagehot, introduction, and notes by Humphrey S. Milford, Oxford Clarendon Press. It includes a large chunk of Bagot's essay on Cowper, which makes me think I must read all Bagot. We have him, haven't we? Now, not that I hold with him. He is too much of a potato by half, but he has great fun. Boy, the small pomnivorous animal so-called. How delicious Cowper himself is, the letters even more than the poetry. Under every disadvantage presented to me as a raw material for a paper and filling with a job an evening which I had hoped to have free. Even so, he charmed me. He is the very essence of what Arthur calls the homely, which is Arthur's favorite genre. All these cucumbers, books, parcels, tea parties, parish affairs. It is wonderful what he makes of them. I suppose we may expect a Columbo letter from you soon. I will vary the usual must stop now by saying I am going to stop now. I am writing in the common room, Kilns, at 8:30 of a Sunday evening, a moon shining through a fog outside and bitter cold night. Yours, Jack. Robot Lady, that is the end of the letter. That is the end of today's episode. Well, almost. Is there anything that you would like to say in closing?
Yeah, I think just one thing. I really appreciate how personal this letter is. Even in all the business dealings and intellectual digressions, you can feel his emotional anchoring at home and with Warnie. So it's a really rich, grounded snapshot of where he was at this point in life. But yeah, I'm all set.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your help and your time today, Robot Lady. Thanks, E. Olson, Nedalate, Daniel, and anybody else who joined today, either live or who joins later on the replay. Thank you so much for your time, attention, and your contributions. They are always wanted, welcome, and appreciated. Until next time, when we continue our read on C.S. Lewis together, everyone, take care.
Break the code. Man and robot lady, we're on. C.S. Lewis letters we unfold, insights and secrets ancient bold. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow, set flake beats in our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow, past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old, we dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled, her calm analysis silver and gold. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow, set flake beats in our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow, past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old, we dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled, her calm analysis silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose, our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross, two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands, Screwtape lands, engage with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance, futuristic insight, we give it a chance. Paragraphs from books, tales of old, we dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled, her calm analysis silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose, our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross, two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands,